Welcome to the Heartland Journals podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Hello, you all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. After you're done here, please hit the subscribe button and then hop over to heartlandjournal.com and see our entire library of shows and contributor columns under the tab we call Journal Entries. Some amazing stuff getting picked up nationally, and I really hope you like it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest David SmallBone, father of 7. You may not know David SmallBone's face, but you might know his kids. For King and Country and Rebecca St. James, he's been the manager and driving force behind their music, but not before living a remarkable story of devastating loss and learning to root his identity in Jesus Christ. In 1991, concert promoter David SmallBone lost $250,000 on a tour. That was real money back then. He knew it would be impossible to recover in Australia, so he and his wife Helen took a big gamble and moved to the US. With them, they took their 7 children. Among them were Rebecca, Ann, Joel, and Luke SmallBone, who were destined years later to form King and Country. When they arrived in America, they had nothing but each other, but that struggle was what helped them find their calling and make it big in Christian music. Now, in his later years, he's watching friends go through retirement, become empty nesters, or go through marriage trouble, but he firmly believes that no season of life is without beautiful and deep purpose. Amen. David, how are you today, sir?
Well, I'm going better because I'm speaking with you, Steve, and to find out that you live 2 miles from me. we need to have coffee soon. We've just had snow and ice here, so it's I don't know. It's a beautiful moment to be alive.
You're right. From the other side of the world and the other hemisphere down south to 2 miles away, it's quite a miracle that we're talking together through the magic of Zoom. So thank you for coming on and taking some time. Let's first talk about the land down under, the land of prisoners, and then we'll talk about America, where the Puritans left England for. When I was young, born in 71, I loved all things Australia. Next to Indiana Jones, I thought Crocodile Dundee was the coolest dude. Rick Springfield, AC/DC, Men at Work. I learned what Vegemite is before the internet searches were available, right? 80s. The Man from Snowy River, 1982, Quigley Down Under. Tell us about the music industry down under in the 70s and 80s. You know, the Finn Brothers and Son, hugely talented. Midnight Oil, one of my favorites. I'm wearing the shirt, Powderfinger. Go.
Well, interesting Australian radio, very influenced by American and English radio. So I think, when the Beatles came along, how many years ago is that? 60 years ago, whatever. That changed a lot of things, and I think influenced artists in Australia. I remember I would listen to the Beatles every night on 4BC in Brisbane from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock every night. They'd play 8 o'clock to 8:30. They'd play all the Beatles hits. And they were absolutely huge in Australia. Now, I think they were huge over here as well. I went to work for a mainstream record label 50 years ago, and believe it or not, that was called M7 Records. But you just mentioned Midnight Oil, and that label started Midnight Oil's career just before they moved over to CBS. And so there's something about Australian music, evidenced best by AC/DC, that is born out of the hotels down there. It's a tradition that you go to the bar after work every day at 5 o'clock. It's an English tradition that was taken down to Australia. I think we've got more alcoholics per capita than any other country in the world, because all the English come to Australia and they drink more in Australia because it's hot down there. In England, it was all very cold. So we have this bar mentality. All the entertainment is in bars. So that's how you get AC/DC, you get Midnight Oil, different but similar. Very, very gutsy music. I think in a strange kind of way, I was one of my best friends, by the way, supported AC/DC in their first tour in Australia, which I think happened, believe it or not, about 50 years ago. But I think I was influenced. Little River Band really influenced me. And I managed, at the same time, I was managing a Christian pop group called Family, there was a 3-part harmony. One of my brothers was in that band. So Little River Band, they impacted America maybe at a higher level than any other Australian band other than AC/DC, really. And they just had a lot of melody. They came out of Adelaide. And so I think I've always been influenced by the harmony side of the music business, and Blow Me Down. Here I am managing for King Country so many years later, and they do that sets them apart a little bit in the Christian music world, because they do the harmony thing, and they have that blend because of brothers. Little River Band, Glenn Shorrock, B. Birtles, and I've forgotten the other guy. They had a harmony sound. They were Australian version of the Eagles, but even better. But that's probably where my greatest influence came from. I love melodic harmony music. Not a lot of it comes out of Australia, but Little River Band did. And then my brother's group called Family, we tried to make it over here in America 50 years ago. It didn't happen. They came over here as Family Tree. And so there's just been in working with a mainstream record label, I worked in the main with pop music, Aussie music, and it was really a great introduction for what I do now, where I manage Rebecca St. James, my daughter, for about 15, 20 years. And then for the last 15 years, I've been managing my son. But I feel the Australian experience with music, I called Avion. There was a guy in that band called Randall Waller, the guitarist, who came over here and was when Shania Twain was really big, he was her guitarist. So there's been a history of doing a lot of time with rock and roll bands, which is, great preparation for what I'm doing now.
You described Australian pub culture even more in common with Ireland than London, the U2s, the Sinead O'Connors, the long list of folks, I think. But since the British invasion and the Beatles, music and movies have been drivers of world culture, I think is fair to say. Mel Gibson, very violent in the beginning, but Liam and Chris Hemsworth, Thor in the Marvel movies. I always get a kick out of the movie Patriot and how it took an Aussie to remind us of America's patriotism. And Mel did The Passion and basically created the faith-based movie industry, proving to Hollywood it can make money. Nobody wanted to fund it in Hollywood, so he did it himself. Yeah. Do you credit, and I'd probably regret it now because he made a lot of money. Do you credit him for being faithful? He's Catholic and spreading the gospel with his fame.
Mel, I view from a distance, don't know him well. One of the guys who was the main camera guy, Johnny Durango, on Unsung Hero, works very closely with Mel. And we went to Mel asking him to play my dad in Unsung Hero, or my sons did. And he decided not to do that. We understand. But I think, Steve, this crazy life we live in, and you living in West Haven, which is a very, very nice place to live. We're all spoiled rich kids here in America. We have it a bit too good sometimes. And I think Mel, through his trials and tribulations, has got stronger. And I
just lost his house.
Appreciate that. Sorry, what was that?
just lost his house in the Palisades fire.
Well, I think in God's economy, man, we look at Hollywood, it influences the world, and a lot of its influence is negative. I wonder, this is just me, I wonder if God is doing something fresh, because, you look at biblical truth. In Australia, we call it, it's not always beer and Skittles. It's not always easy. Biblical truth is so amazing to me, because I just turned 75. And it's so real. It's so genuine. It's the life to live. And what I love about Mel, he came out with Passion of the Christ. You're right. Hollywood couldn't get behind it because they're controlled by a lot of Jewish folks. And that movie impacted the world. And I love it. Even some of the comments Mel is saying after the fires, I love it that Mel's got stronger in his faith perspective, because in the entertainment world, in my world, even in Christian music, that doesn't always happen, because the battle between ministry and business, for a lot of people, business wins and people retire disenchanted. And I think my experience that you talked about at the beginning of losing everything, seeing the hands and feet of Jesus, that happened at 40. I started the Hillsong record label. They called me up on my 40th birthday to say, we don't want you anymore. And I just lost all the money on the tour previously. But that experience I almost recommend it for everybody, because I saw the hands and feet of Jesus, and it moved me from lukewarm to passionate. And that's where I want to be. I want to encourage everyone I come in contact with, live the life and talk about Jesus. It, in my life, incredibly life-giving. It's given me a wonderful life. I can say to you at 75, I'm a very grateful old bloke. And there's two things. The two people that make me cry are my wife and Jesus. My wife has loved me unconditionally, and Jesus challenged me to give my life away. And getting back to Mel Gibson, he's doing it, bro. And he's got another movie coming out, as you know. And he stayed over there in Hollywood. They were pretty nasty to him there for a while. I think they're probably friends a little bit again now. But he's a hero, man.
He's a hero, man. That's true. Tell me, Adelaide, Australia. I've actually been there and seen it. It's actually the city of churches. Actually seeing the Southern Cross for the first time helped me understand that looking up to heaven makes really no sense. He's everywhere all the time, not hovering above America, our egocentric xenophobia or whatnot. But it's beautiful to see that cross in the sky. Is there a good Christian music scene there still?
The last year or so, Hillsong has faded. There's some leadership issues there. And I think Hillsong really did extraordinary work all around the world for about 3 decades. So there's a bit of a vacuum there. In Melbourne, there's a group called the Planet Shakers, and they impact the world. America, not so much. I've even gone to one of their producers and said, hey, you need to do remixes of what you do with Planet Shaker, because they really impact Asia at an incredibly high level. But Australia, unfortunately, is post-Christian. You think of Adelaide. I was just over there. We toured there mid-year, and it's the faith perspective is very quiet in Australia, and it's challenging to me. One of the great encouragement of that tour was the last concert I did in Australia with Amy 35 years ago was at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre. And, you know, it probably had 2,500 people in a 9,000 seater. And we went back there, and on this tour we just finished mid-year, we had 9,000 there. And my son, as he spoke about it, Joel spoke about me being there 35 years ago with Amy and losing everything, that being the final concert. And then that Brisbane concert was the final concert of that tour, and there was 9,000 there, and it was emotional for him and I, really. But a lady wrote in and said, after that concert, and said, "Thank you for giving us hope. Thank you for talking about family. Thank you for talking about the wonder of the practical Christian life." And the way for King and Country do things, they sing in parables. They don't, it's not your normal worship band, you know. And so the Christians know what we're singing about, and the people outside the Christian community think, oh, this is very positive, you know, because so much is negative out there. But I felt after our little tour down there, the Christians are struggling, but I wonder whether it could end up, revival could come. Like, I think my hope is that in LA, which is very post-Christian, particularly Hollywood is, that there will be revival, that people will realize, hey, the woke way of living doesn't work. I got to look at something else. Because you look at the leadership over there in California, you look at the lady who runs the mayor over there, she's woke. You look at the lady who ran the water department, she's woke. You know, their values are opposite to ours. And I think any thinking person is, hey, there's got to be a better way. And I just wonder, and I think I saw a church. I heard about a church this morning over there in one of the LA suburbs, and they're being passionate about outreach and being, hey, whenever the going is tough, the culture doesn't help us, but the church does. And I wonder whether the challenge for all of us is, how do we encourage revival out of one of the darkest weeks America has seen, with a fire that no one thought was possible. And there's a lot of incompetence in there. A lot of people didn't do their job. But my hope is that something very positive is going to come out of something very dark. This is a moment that we will never forget. It's like, you know, I was born 4 years after, I was born in 1949, 4 years after World War II finished. But knowing my parents, my dad went to war up into New Guinea, and my mum, they were challenged by that war, you know, to their core. And they loved on me. They were wonderful parents. My wife also had wonderful parents. But I believe it came out of a very dark season. You know, that war is a very dark season. And what we've just seen in LA, a very dark season. But my hope is that it drives us all to deeper faith. Because you and I know, and the way you do this podcast, it's a beautiful thing, sharing the hope in Jesus you shared with me. A lot of the people you've had on, you've got a lot of heroes, man, a lot of heroes of the faith. Just hearing that so gladdened my heart. So my encouragement to you, Steve, is keep up the good work. And my encouragement to your audience is, let's find a way, each of us, in living the life more loudly and sharing his message more loudly. Because a lot of what I find here, and you probably see it in the Bible Belt. We both live in the Bible Belt. I live 2 miles away from Steve. And we're slow to talk about Jesus. We talk about business very easily. And I think, and a lot of our friends and associates are in church on Sunday. I think the challenge for us all is to make sure it impacts our behavior on Monday. And I think all of us, there's a calling on our lives, and you're doing it, Steve, by doing this podcast.
Well, I mean, you're doing it because it's the gospel music, I believe, that's going to do it. The invention of the gramophone that led to anybody anywhere on earth on the internet to be able to hear the songs of that talk about Jesus, like you just said, which your sons and daughters do. You know, let's real quick talk about Darlene Zak, right? She's an Australian Pentecostal Christian worship leader. Her manager is here in Nashville too, Danny McGuffey. I don't know if you know him, but she's a former worship pastor of Hillsong, pioneer of the modern worship movement. She's from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. First album, 1987. Do you know them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I talked to Darlene was over here a couple of months ago. We caught up, and we caught up at the Dove Awards. It was just a beautiful. She's a real deal, man. Like and even they've got a church. They got a church down at Thompson Station that she and her husband oversee. And I remember touring White Hart in Australia probably 40 years ago. And I had Darlene and now the Hillsong Band come out and play at some of the concerts we did in New South Wales. But she's one of those people who've got stronger in faith. And I love their international perspective. And I hold she and her husband in very high regard, known them for 40 plus years.
Okay. Well, if she keeps doing it and you guys keep doing it, we can make that happen. I've been tweeting Zachariah to Gavin Newsom all day long. He needs to repent and say, I'm sorry, and let God do it, not say we're going to build back stronger. That's a big mistake. That's what 9/11 did. And we had to have a second one, which was the COVID thing. So, okay. So then you came to America, which is the big leagues. I remember reading, as a kid, Led Zeppelin and the Stones saying America was the biggest market on earth. They're nothing until they could make it here. Like Frank Sinatra said, make it here, you can make it anywhere. So, and the Who, right? So it was a British invasion. So when you got the call for Amy Grant, you must have thought it was the big time.
Oh yeah, I did. And
tell us about the early days of that.
I worked with John Huey for her agent for quite a while to get her to come with me. And I don't know what's going on here, but something strange.
I still see you. It's the internet. It's you're still there.
Oh, okay. So what the way I was able to get Amy over there is I'd toured Striper, and John Huey was also the agent for Striper, and Striper and my team, we had a fun time. So I'd done my apprenticeship with Striper, and then I was able to get Amy to come over. But we were going through, Australia was going through a financial crisis at the time. I think Australians are very black and white, and Amy was starting to cross over, do more mainstream music. And I think some of the Australians weren't sure, was she singing Christian music anymore, because she was going wider, and she did a very good job at that. But hey buddy, my conclusion after all these years, that was supposed to happen. I was supposed to lose all that money on that tour to force me to come to America. And I remember going to Helen, how many years ago? 33 years ago, and saying, hey babe, I think the only way we can get ahead is go to America. And she said, we'll go for 2 years. And 33 years later, we're still here. And had we stayed in Australia, it would be very difficult for Rebecca to have her ministry, very difficult for King Country. And I think my message to anyone who's watching this, if you're going through hard times, my life experience says it's preparation for a new season for you. So don't give up. I tell you, the one thing it did for my wife and I and our kids, we're on our knees. I still I still remember Joel, one of the guys in King Country. I think he was 8 at the time, just after we were arriving here in our furniture's house over there at Brentwood, praying that we would have furniture. And 2 weeks later, we had, and I think what that time did, it brought our family together.
Yeah.
We became a praying family. And then my wife decided to homeschool. So when Rebecca's career started, we went on the road. We had an RV, so all the kids were in the RV, and the band were in the tour bus. And so I put the kids to work as production for Rebecca, and that's how they did their apprenticeship for what they do now. And so they're all involved in music, and it was a product of very hard times, but they did an apprenticeship. They never went, they were homeschooled, never went to college. So they went to the School of Hard Knocks, and it all came out of this living by faith experience. So I think if you're going through hard times, the Lord is maybe helping you grow like he did me. And my only thing is, as it did for me, I encourage you all, if there's hard times, go deeper with Jesus. Pray fervently as a family. And had I been all successful and everything, I would have just lived an average life in a really nice house in Glenorrey, Sydney, Australia. But it was all taken away in 2 weeks. I now view it as I was given, my family and we were given a gift.
Wow. Amy was like your Elvis. You had a proven winning lottery ticket. Didn't work out so well. Stryper has sold over 10 million albums worldwide, recordings worldwide, and 2/3, I found this interesting, 2/3 of their albums were bought by non-Christians. Pretty fantastic. And when you got to America, what did you think of the music industry players here compared to back home? I'm talking like Clive Davis, the last decade, Diddy and Jay-Z. Ahmed Artigan founded Atlantic Records. Walter Yetnikoff led CBS Records from 75 to 90. They were the gatekeepers, and one thing you can say they had in common might be uber territorial and a dislike of Christian contemporary music. How'd you navigate them to get King and Country to the top?
Well, like coming out of Australia, buddy, you've got to, even to get over here, immigration and all that, you've got to have a degree of tenacity. And so my wife says to me, if David can't get in the door, he'll go in through the window. And in a funny kind of way, she's saying, oh, David doesn't always listen to the Holy Spirit. We really, when our wives tell us this stuff. But part of me, I'm a never say die guy. And I came over here to work for somebody, and he let me go after 2 months. And that's why we had the hard times. But that living by faith experience, and I'm out there talking to everybody, like I talked to every record label there was and got rejected by most of them. So I go to one record label, I go to Forefront, and the guy says, oh, no, we're not interested in signing a 14-year-old girl. And so that opportunity goes away. Well, that guy left a year after that. And I was keeping, and I'd gone to everybody in town. I'd spoken to every record label there is, and none of them were interested. Then the A&R guy at Forefront leaves. Eddie DeGarmo, one of the owners, comes in as the A&R, and as the A&R guy, I hear that. I go and take a meeting with him, and from the first meeting, very, very interesting. And do you know why he was interested so much? DeGarmo and Key with the band that supported Amy Grant. So he's out there seeing and looking at what had happened to her. She'd become very successful. He's thinking, at the time Rebecca was 15, I'm very interested in signing this 15-year-old girl. And that's what happened. And so rejection for everybody particularly for the first year, and from Eddie's record label, then Eddie gets off the road with DeGamo and Key, who you will remember, comes in as A&R guy at Forefront, and also a partner with Dan Brock, and the rest is history. It was a beautiful relationship with Forefront. He made the comment that he and Bill Hearn, who used to be at Capitol, made the comment that we are the hardest workers in the industry. And I think that's part of coming from another country. I think part of it is the College of Hard Knocks compared to going to Trevecca or Lipscomb or Belmont. You get all the head knowledge. You're not necessarily practical. So my kids, they're practical. My younger son, who now runs a business, he started running a follow spot at 8. Joel was doing backup vocals for Rebecca and stage managing at 12. I got an interesting story about that to tell you very quickly. We were up in New York at a union venue, and Joel's 12, 13. He's now 40. So that was 27 years ago. The union guys come up to our sound guy and say, "Oh, we can't go ahead with the show because we got this kid being the stage manager." And our sound guy went to the union guy and said, "Hey, okay, there'll be no show without the kid, Joel, at 13, being the stage manager. The show doesn't go on." They said, "Oh, okay." And they let the show go on. At the end of it, Joel and the union guys became best friends, and they gave him a union jacket. And I just think, oh, buddy, there's something about the School of Hard Knocks and doing it tough and ending up. I think what it forced us to have a strong work ethic to survive, because if we didn't survive, back to Australia, and we never viewed that as an option.
That was it. Yeah, burned your boats. That's the old Viking statement there. So the total estimated annual
income. Burn the ships. But you remember, the King Country put out a song called "Burn the Ships," and it is one of our, to this day, it's in our set, one of our most popular songs. And really, it comes out of addiction. In addiction, you've got to burn the ships, put the past behind, clean slate. That's why AA, Celebrate Recovery, are so important, because they help you do that. But yeah, you're right. We burnt the ships because we had nothing to go back to. We'd sold everything. We didn't have
very powerful scene in the movie King and Country that the Irwin brothers put out for you that literally has them burning pretend ships at a playground. Those jungle gyms that look like that. So yeah, very important.
You got a good memory, man.
I'm thorough. I want to get into the nitty gritty with somebody. I don't want to just talk about what they had for breakfast this morning. But so the total estimated annual income of the King and Country is approximately $2 to $2.5 million across all possible revenue streams. This is based on a total audience of 3.1 million users from Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, so the streaming services. Brothers Joel and Luke SmallBone have won 4 Grammy Awards, 7 GMA Dove Awards, a Billboard Music Award, 13 K-Love Fan Awards, and their 9 #1 songs have produced an astonishing accumulation of over 1 billion on-demand streams. So people love it. Do you think the industry will look at that and try to help the industry even for purely profit motive? I mean, Clive Davis is 92, right? He's last of the old boys network, and Diddy's in jail. So the path is open, right?
Mike Kerr owns our record label, and he's very, very committed to us. And so
hopefully he'll come on the show soon. I've been trying.
Oh, I can help you. I can help you contact him. I talk to him pretty regularly. This is what our challenge is. And what we're doing now, we're taking this year off. And so historically, we've always made our albums while we're on the road, doing other things. And it's just busy, busy, busy. So this year, we're taking all the year off in the first half to make a new album, and we'll be home. And the second half, we'll make another movie. And so I think it's interesting for King Country, a very strong profit center for our record label. Very strong, one of their strongest. And so I think the pressure is on us and our team, because Mike is a big believer in for King Country, and his wife is a big believer as well. And so the challenge for us is to come up with the song that connects with everybody. We've had a lot of good songs. God Only Knows it's been used as music behind a lot of the videos coming out of LA and the fires. A young boy just sang God Only Knows on The Voice, and that his version of that had 100 million views in 5 days, which I'd never ever seen happen before in my life. So that song is highly reactive. It's the challenges for us. What goes on in the rest of the industry doesn't really impact us. We have an owner who believes in our mission, and his wife believes in our mission as well at a very high level. And so it's up to us to deliver the creativity that shares the most wonderful message known to man to as many people as possible. That was one of our core principles. Our core principles are loving on the brokenhearted and sharing the most wonderful message known to man to as many people as possible. So we don't have, a lot of artists in Christian music have a problem in getting attention, and particularly to go wider. Our song is our current song, Place in This World, is number 12 on Pop AC radio at the moment. And part of that is our record label is very supportive in taking us wider. Your question leads me to say it's up to us. And I think the boys, the last concert tour they did here in America, their fall tour, was their most creative they've ever done. They had 9 pods on stage going up 40, 50 feet in the air. They're doing stuff that's never been done in our genre before, competitive with mainstream. Now, I think our challenge is we've got to find music that encourages the Christian but touches the non-Christian. And ours is a message of hope.
That's exactly what you did with Stryper. So I have faith that you can do that, and you have played a part in his name being glorified. I've always wondered how the artists keep families together on the road. Married couples like Garth and Trisha Yearwood or Tim and Faith, they perform together. That's one way. Amy and Vince Gill, they perform together at Christmas, so that helps. And I interviewed Rodney Atkins, and he said he tours but stays local to home and always takes the kids with him. You've got 9 kids, some grandkids now. How many?
7 kids, 16 grandkids.
16 grandkids. How do you keep the family intact, patriarch? How do you do it?
Families, as you know, it's not always easy, but it's like everything in life. It's wonderful. So what happens with my sons, and it so gladdens my heart, Luke, when he's on the road, will always take one of his children with him. And even he was just over in London. They did a couple of nights in London on the Christmas tour, and he took one of his children there. And my eldest son, Daniel, who does production, he took his daughter. And so there's a commitment to always take family. Helen and I, we're on the road probably at Christmas time. We went to one of the New York shows, and I went to the 4 shows at the Grand Ole Opry. So I think that pattern that we started with taking the kids on the road when we started with Rebecca 31 years ago, that's continuing to this day. And Rebecca's out doing her own touring at the moment, and she takes all her family out on the road. So it's a bit, I think we're close to what Rodney Atkins does, family. are very important. One of the things that we do on the road, which not all Christian artists do, which I think helps us survive, we'll do a devotional every day on the road before the concert. So we'll do a Q&A at 5:30, and then at 6:15 we'll do a devotional, and either I or a pastor
Is that Dr. AM or Rockstar PM?
What's that?
Is that Rockstar PM 5:30, 6:30, or Dr. AM?
5:30 it's question and answer.
At night or in the morning?
PM.
Okay,
got it. That's before the show starts. So we do a Q&A. The shows probably these days draw, anywhere between 3,000 to 10,000. And before it, we give people the opportunity to come in and ask questions. And normally anywhere between 200 to 500 people will come in and sit down with the boys for half an hour and ask questions. And then that finishes. A quarter of an hour later, we'll do devotions and we pray. And then at 7:00 is when the show starts. So the devotional part of our mission, our ministry, is very important, because we can so easily forget on what we're called to do. And I think it's a good reminder. And I think that's, the challenge for you and I even in our business discussions with people. How do we find a way of bringing Jesus into that? Because there's a lot of hurting folks at the moment, and Jesus can help these people more so than anything. And I think the gift that I've been given, I've seen the miraculous. So there's no question for me. As I said earlier, I'm 75. All the funerals I'm going to are people younger than me. I just had a industry associate of mine who I met with yesterday text me this morning that his wife, my age, who's been in hospice for a while, she's got hours to live. And I think we all need to look at life that way, because I think we all think we've got lots of time. And a lot of us don't. We lost 4 main Christian radio people this year, all much younger than me. And we're here for a season. And I think what we can easily do in the Christian life, and I think I did it for the first half of my life, we put it off. We say, oh, well, I'll do that next year or tomorrow or whatever. And this idea, and particularly us guys being in the Bible Belt, we can be lulled into a false sense of everything's okay. And the culture is in need of us. I think the culture needs us. And even dealing with the federal government for the last 4 years, in my mind, they didn't represent the wonder of America. And I think there's a chance. I know the guy, that's a guy you need to get on the show. A guy called Ryan Higgins was Trump's church liaison guy for this recent election, and he really helped a great deal in getting the church community to support. But have him on sometimes. I think he's perfect for Trump. I'm hoping he's going to get into the faith office. Trump has a faith, the White House has a faith office, and I hope he gets in there. But his role in encouraging the church to vote for the anti-abortion, like we were going down a sad path.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraged that why I mentioned Ryan is Trump has a lot of Christians around him, and I know quite a number of them. And even Mike Huckabee getting to be ambassador to Israel, That's a beautiful thing. Mike Huckabee is a wonderful apologist for Jesus. I've known him for quite a while. He helped, For King Country is his favorite band, and he helped get For King Country started by having us on his late night show at Fox, 12 years ago.
We interviewed Bob Farrell of Farrell and Farrell here, very early Christian contemporary couple. He and his wife Jane. They worked a lot with Eddie DeGarmo, who you just mentioned,
They did.
and also a pioneer. He was played in your movie Unsung Hero by Jonathan Jackson, who played Avery from Nashville's TV show for you youngsters out there. Bob, Jane, and Eddie were part of the movement that brought down the Berlin Wall, to be honest with you, by playing Moscow like 50 dates the year before Billy Joel and before Reagan's Mr. Gorbachev Tear Down This Wall was successful. That was a great movie from last year too, to remind us of that. Do you still think music with Jesus in the lyrics can bring down walls like that?
No question. I look at the worship movement, which I've been around, and I think worship is paralleling a revival. And the Passion just had their conference in Georgia, and 30,000 young people there. And I hope, my hope is that it can, that 18 to 24-year-old demographic, very hard demo to get to, and it's a lot of those people who are pro Hamas, and like I'm thinking to myself, hey guys, go overseas. If you go overseas and see how the rest of the world lives, you're not going to be going on with all this junk. So I feel it's more important than ever. I think, going back to your question about the record labels, I think sometimes record labels do Christian music on the cheap. Our label gives us the budgets to make good music. Here we are recording and sharing the most wonderful message known to man. We have to do it better. I think the challenge is to take the standard of music up. And I think that's happening. And I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing. And even with K-Love here in town, they've got the Air One, which is a worship network. It's strong, and they're doing a lot of marketing, and it's getting big audiences. And a lot of times now, K-Love is the number one station in a lot of markets. People are hungry. Even people who are not in church are hungry for Jesus, and a lot of them listen to Christian radio. But talking about being in church, sidebar here, my encouragement is, if anyone's watching this and they are Christians and they're not in church, get in church. We need to be in church. We need to be fed good food. We need to be in community. And a number of people in our genre, well, they're out singing Christian music, but they're not necessarily in church. Whenever I've seen somebody, I had a friend who we've done a lot of work with in Christian music business. He said, "Oh, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm doing really good work." And he was doing good work. He ran a rehab ministry. And he and I would have strong debate. Even I'd get him to speak at devotion sometime. I remember the last devotion he did for us. And I challenged him. I said, "Hey, buddy, you got to get in church." And he said, "Well, SmallBone, I'll get in church if you get in therapy." Like he was, but his ministry is no longer. And the culture is deceitful. The flesh is deceitful. We need community. And even, the Bible study we saw each other at, what a beautiful thing, and that guy who spoke about humility, that guy, wow.
As my friend Aaron, yeah, he's been on the show too. So let me ask you, you got Lanny Wilson, Ann Wilson, Need to Breathe, another crossover, kind of, you could listen to them as just pop and rock, and you could also get the message in there. They seem to be still faithful, but then you got like Taylor Swift that went all pop and just completely, blown up in terms of sales, and that's fine. That's one thing. But why do you think they still don't allow the let's just call it Christian contemporary to blow up? I mean, we had the guy from Based Records here in Nashville, Michael Azarelli. He's in Nashville. He's been on the show too. He advertises literally that his artists can say patriotic and Jesus things. Like, hey, you don't want to work for Warner Brothers? You can work for me and you can sing the good words, just like you're talking about. They all should, if they want to make money and save the world, right? Why? I know I've asked you this. I'm just asking you like a third way, like to make it make sense. Why will they not just let Satan get behind them and actually give the people the music they want, the message that we need to hear, and they could also profit?
Well, it's a battle between good and evil, and it's biblical. The culture has always been negative to Jesus, and you look at all the disciples, basically murdered and crucified, and I think it'll always be the case. And I think the only hope is if the gatekeepers find Jesus. Until that time, they see us as the enemy, because the Jesus life is life-giving. A lot of the people on the other side have bought into the lie of, let's party today because tomorrow we die. And my conclusion is that it's a life half lived. And I think that's why it's so important for you, myself, and everybody watching this to talk to everybody about Jesus, the believers and the non-believers. The believers need encouragement because the culture is always trying to take them down. And the non-believers, it's a life half lived. And I do think something's going on. Like even with the young people being so, that 18 to 24 demographic being so excited about Jesus and worship music doing so well. I look at our church. I go to Conduit Church. Conduit Church has grown from 500 to 3,000 in 2.5 years. Now, some of that Californians coming over, some from Chicago, some from New York, but revival's going on.
Washington State, like me, because I think you're talking about Conduit and Daryl Tyler, who was a Christian contemporary booking artist, manager in the day. Yeah.
And I think it's a genuine faith. So what happened? We used to go to Church of the City, and I got Darren Tyler his job there. The pastor, Darren Whitehead, his job there 26 years ago as assistant youth leader, because he came to me. He worked at a radio station in Adelaide. He said, "Can you get me a job in America?" So I approached the youth leader at church. He said, "Yeah," and I approached YFM. I went to Bob Oaksberg, the president at the time, and said, "Hey, got this guy from Australia working radio. How about he come and work for you for 6 weeks, no pay? And if you like him, give him a job." He worked for 6 weeks, gave him a job. And so, it's this, I think genuine faith. And what I was going on to say is Helen she watched Church of the City, watched Conduit, watched Tim Keller. And she looked at all that and saw the way that Conduit, I say it differently to you Americans, you say conduit, don't you? How do you say it?
Conduit.
Yeah. And she saw the way our church never asks for money, but when they do ask for money, it's for overseas missions. They've got missions in Haiti, missions in Africa, missions and we talk about it most Sundays. And it's an absolute beautiful thing. So she said, "David, we're going to leave and go down there." And it's got bigger now, but it was smaller in those days. and it's very life-giving. I get into trouble because I talk to too many people when we leave after church. In the bigger churches, it's hard to know anybody. I've got an attorney friend who goes to one of the mega churches. He doesn't know anybody. He's there every Sunday, but that's the thing. You're in and out. But in the smaller church, and that seats, I think they seat about 500 there. But seeing all that stuff, I think Darren survived Christian music, got stronger, is very real. And some people, I remember one Sunday, he talked about a cultural issue, and three families got up and left because he was bringing the Jesus perspective. I don't know whether it was to the gay issue or trans or whatever, but he talked about that, and 3 families moved out, probably never to be seen again at our church, which is a shame because I think Darren and Mo and the folks at our church, they speak truth, and through the craziness of Christian music, Dan got stronger. And I don't know if you know that, but he had a Bible study at Journey Church. The Bible study got bigger and bigger, and the pastor said, "Hey, you need to go and start a church." That's what he did.
Yeah, no, the success story in a short amount of time for that church is unbelievable. There should be books written about it one day. I might write it myself. Who knows?
He's just writing a book, and he's writing a book with the lady who co-wrote Helen's book, and I think it'll be really good.
Yeah, he has written a book. I've read it. It's very good too. Okay, so that's actually a great segue to what I want to go to. So we talked about movies, we talked about music. J. Warner Wallace is a cold case homicide detective out in LA, and he's an author. He wrote Cold Case Christianity, which investigates the claims of the gospel, basically proves it. Episode 62 for you new listeners. He said Jesus has more books about him, about 109 million versus number 2, George Washington, 58 million for Washington. Elvis is still second richest dead celebrity of all time because he said they had similar lives in a way, Elvis and Jesus. You can read the book Person of Interest for more, but Elvis and gospel, huge hits. All that to say, King and Country and Rebecca adds to that library, 9 #1 songs for the boys. What's the future of Joel and Luke and Rebecca to live forever in the library of gospel music?
Rebecca retired for about 5 or 6 years, and then came back about 6 years ago, and so she's releasing a book on integrity, and then she's recording again. She does a beautiful thing and takes her family on the road with her, which we mentioned earlier. But I think it's, and her husband was in the music business as well, so he's aware of the craziness of this life. So at the moment, she has a residency once a month down at First Baptist Dallas. She goes down there and leads worship, and then she's also runs a podcast for Focus on the Family. So she's going a little wider, and as she's growing older, and a lot of girls who grew up with her music are really, and are now a similar age, are really looking forward or look to her for guidance, because it's not easy being a mum and having lots of kids in this crazy culture, because the culture is saying it's all about me, and Jesus is saying, give your life away. And so it's a crazy moment in time. So I think her consistency in being strong about Jesus is probably impacting more people today than almost ever in time. I think with the King Country, we did 2 movies last year. We put up our Christmas show in theaters. That did pretty well. And then we had Unsung Hero come out mid-year. That did better than the critics thought it would be. And we're now looking at releasing another movie based on Little Drummer Boy. And that's what's in that's what's in the future. And I think where we're at is mixing film and music, and really trying to be.
Just don't do a Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Heart Club.
Trying to be more focused. And I think we had with Burn the Ships. Burn the Ships did really well. I think it might have gone double platinum or something. It did well. I don't know. I've forgotten the numbers. And then the follow-up, What Are We Waiting For, didn't do as well. And so even though it impacted a lot of people, it had the song Unsung Hero on it. And so we getting that right mix of creativity, it's never easy, but I applaud the guys for taking the year off to get it right. And I look at how they're connecting so well lately. I think there's an opportunity to take this message wider.
And Luke got down to around 125 pounds with ulcerative colitis. Hopefully he's fully recovered. Is he? And Joel married Latin Christian music artist and actress Mariah. How are they doing?
They're doing well. They're just leaving today to go to a songwriting seminar in Honolulu. Luke still has to have an infusion. I think every 6 weeks or so. So, interesting thing about those guys is so different. Luke is very good at business, very spiritually sensitive. Joel's out there. He's going to make something work. He's going to go where angels fear to tread. But you put those two together, it's very strong. I've been particularly encouraged because we've been got off the road, the 20th of December, and seeing Joel and Mariah doing so much life together, because, and in a good way, she came out and sang one of the songs on the Christmas tour. So they did that. A lot of times they're not touring together.
That'll help you with the Latin American market, which is ginormous.
Yeah. And then Luke took his family up. We were all together up in New York, and so that was a bit of a special moment as well. So I think there's something about doing life together. I think on talking about that, the one thing that I want to share that could be helpful to some people, and it wasn't my idea, but at the end of 2020, Helen came to me and said, David, I want to start praying together every night. We had prayed together before when we first got married, but I'd go to sleep. She didn't like that. And so we stopped praying. We were still a praying family. And then at the end of 2020, she said, I want to start that discipline of praying together every night. And so last night she prayed. I'll pray tonight. But I had this funny thing happen last year. I said to one of my buddies, I think, I'm more in love. Here I am. At the time, I'd been married 48 years. I'm now married 49 years. It doesn't quite add up, because over time it kind of fades a little bit. And, physically, I'm not as strong as I used to be. And I thought about it for a while. I said, how can I say that? And I think what happened is that prayer time every night, if there was any issues that she and I had with each other, we're on the same page on the big stuff, occasionally on the little stuff where, I might be insensitive over something or forget to go and do something or something. And it's a little bit of an issue. But with that prayer time every night, we start the day clean. The next day, we go to sleep, then we wake up, we're ready to start off the day with no baggage. So for any of your listeners, anyone watching this, wasn't my idea. It's my wife's idea. But I really,
Well, she is the star of the movie, Helen, the glue that
she
held it
is.
all together, co-founder of Mum Life Community and a podcast host with Access More. How is she doing encouraging mothers for Jesus?
She does that. And I think that's all she wanted to do. Remember when we got married, she wanted to have children. She was an occupational therapist. She wanted to have children straight away. And we were only going to have four. But the kids were such good therapy for me. I'd pray with them, sing with them, put them down to bed every night. And with music business being so crazy, it ended up being a thing that was life-giving to me. And I said, can we continue to have more? And she said, yes. So that's why, because we both come from families of four. And most of my siblings and her siblings have four. And but had we not had more than four, there'd be no for King and Country. There'd be just for King, and I'm just not sure that would work as well.
And for those that want a good read, Helen has a book, Behind the Lights. What does she want people to get out of that book?
I think at the end of the day, she's an apologist for taking motherhood very seriously. The culture tends to demean it and says, oh, go out and get a job. That's how you can get your self-worth. And she's an apologist for family. And honestly, buddy, as I think about it, makes me a bit emotional. She's loved on me, loved on all the kids. I'm a bit of a piece of work. And how we ever got together when we met first time 53 years ago. She was 16, I was 21. It was a miracle. I can't believe it. I'm thankful every day. And you're making me cry a little bit, bro.
Well, you're blessed and she deserves it. So that's good. Show some emotion, and I'm sure that'll help a long way. So as I wrap this all up here, AC/DC formed in 1973. You mentioned that earlier, so over 50 years. They are coming to Nashville this year. Angus Young is 70 in March, so still
Wow.
going. Rick Springfield is 75. Australians are made of resilient stuff. His voice still sounds pretty darn good. Do you think King and Country will continue as long?
I think they'll continue in music. I hope they do. There's something about Joel and Luke is so different. Luke is very much like his mother. Joel has some similarities to his father, even though he's much more talented than I. I got into music as a bass player, and I was the weakest member of the band. And so that's when I was always organizing everything, promoting everything. I ran a monthly coffee shop. And so the music that the guys have in them is, it comes from my mum. My mum was very musical. I was just adequate. I had to practice a lot. I didn't have a good ear, but both my sons have a very, very good ear.
You're still there. I still hear you. There's a little bit of buffer
Yep.
there, but keep going. Good ear.
Yeah. Oh, I was just saying that my sons have inherited their musicality, not from either Helen or I, but they've got it from my mum, who passed away 2 years ago. And I had the wonderful privilege of going back to say goodbye to her in Australia, which I didn't have with my dad, who passed away unexpectedly 31 years ago. He had colon cancer, got pneumonia in hospital, and passed away. Had I been there, I would have got him into a better hospital. He was in a country hospital. He needed to be into a city hospital. So I never had the chance to say goodbye because I had money problems. I had immigration problems 31 years ago. But I was able to go back and say goodbye to my mum, and I got giddy because I was really saying goodbye to mum and dad. It was one of the more beautiful moments of my life.
Wow. Well, that is fantastic. And you came from far away. yet chose Nashville as home. What is it about Nashville that y'all love so much?
The people here are amazing. In my weakest moment, Christian people loved on me. Now, the industry really wanted me to go away because the industry doesn't like to be around failures. And so it was hard for me to get my foot in the door. And without Eddie Gamo, I don't think it would have ever happened. And I let him know, I talk to him pretty regularly. I let him know in no uncertain terms. We live on a little farm 2 miles west of you. This is another miracle. I bought it 28 years ago. I had $10,000 in the bank. And we came out, our real estate agent who had organized our house to rent, I told her we were looking for a place, and she brought us out here. And the farmer fell in love with my family because he'd had 6 kids. And I didn't even have credit at the time. You know, isn't that crazy? I didn't have credit looking to buy a house. And so he offers us the note. He takes the note. The house cost, it was 9 acres, an old farmhouse here, 9 acres, and it cost $287,000. And we had $10,000 in the bank. I went to the record label, got an advance of $10,000 from them on Rebecca's Publishing. So I had $20,000, and the farmer took the note. And so us living in this, well, you know, West Haven's beautiful, the lake there, you know, driving past there, seeing all the Christmas lights, seeing the Christmas tree. I drive past every day. Excuse me. So life-giving. And so I think there's a lot of people here who have similar goals to what you and I have, to maximize life. And to do that, it's to go deeper with Jesus. And the community here, these people are the real deal. I think sometimes they're like all of us. We get confused, we forget. And we travel the world. We've been to Russia, Romania, Kyrgyzstan, you know, all over Europe, down to Australia, doing concerts. I just love coming back here. It's my therapy. And my daily therapy is, my wife's got lots of animals. I've got about 150, 200 ducks, geese, guinea, and chickens. But in the old days, my therapy was praying with the kids every night. Now my therapy is putting them all away. and it takes me an hour to do it. And last night I had 3 ducks that didn't want to go away. And I don't know, it takes me closer to the Lord, you know, takes me closer to his wonderful world. And so that's isn't that weird?
There was a saint that preached to the penguins, right? So it's whatever you need to do, and you're doing an amazing job. Well, David, I could do this for actually another hour, but I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your honesty, truth, and your children are a blessing. We're at the end here, so please tell our listeners where they can go to find out more about you, follow your social media, any upcoming speaking engagements, dates of concerts, anything. Tell us whatever we can do to learn more.
Well, you're catching me there. I'm not on Facebook, but I would encourage you to follow my wife, Helen SmallBone, on Facebook. As far as websites, we're going over to, I think we're going over to Bayside next week. I don't even know the date. I should know that. But Helen and I, speaking at Bayside, they've got a conference. We go out once a month. Isn't that funny? You know, I'm pretty good at promoting my sons and my daughter. In the past, my daughter. I'm not too good at promoting myself. So, but yeah, if you go to Helen's Facebook, that's probably the best way to connect. And if you haven't read her book Behind the Lights, she's about to put out a devotional book. That's why I get emotional, man. How come the spiritual lady decided to give her life to hanging with me. And interesting story on that, and I'll be quick. So we meet each other at a church miraculously, and I end up living in a camper behind her house. She's 16, I'm 21, so we talk every day. And she came to me one day after about 6 months, said, "David, if you're more serious about Jesus, we could have a long-term friendship, long-term relationship." And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then she started dating the youth leader at the church. And I thought, well, that's gone away. 6 months later after that, she's now 17, I'm now 22. I make a decision at a Bible study to follow Jesus. She dropped that guy, and we've been together ever since. And that was 52 years ago. That was a longer outro to what you were looking for, but I always think that's the gift I was given, man. I was given this spiritual lady who loves Jesus and loves me, and she and Jesus both make me cry, and they're both beautiful.
The Lord works in mysterious ways, my friend. So there you have it right there. Well, it's time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That's how we grow and keep this content free for you. That is it for this episode. Thank you, David SmallBone, in making the kingdom that much more beautiful with your offspring. Go forth and multiply songs. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com. See you all tomorrow. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God.
Yeah, I've been dreaming of the wild, wild plains, walking where the pine trees dance.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.